Hello and welcome to Learning to Love the Body You're In mini course. And this course is maybe very new to you, what I'm going to say, this material, because it comes from both an astrology and a shamanism perspective. So if you're watching this, you would have felt this longing yourself for just a feeling of happiness about your body, a feeling of acceptance and love about who you actually are, rather than the cultural and media created boxes of what women are supposed to be like. But of course, there are so many kinds of women. And actually, even those who manage to be a size 8 and fit into what the media perceive as a beautiful woman, often deep down aren't actually happy because we're missing a fundamental element when we project this need for love, for acceptance onto our body shape. And it's much, much deeper than that. So what I'm going to talk to you about is it's not a miracle cure, it's not a diet, and it's about you really being challenged out of these boxes, stepping out of these boxes to acknowledge and accept who you are, but also to address this very deep wound that so many women on the planet are carrying. So where does this wound come from? Well, it comes from our relationship with our mother, and really our whole patterns of life are set down from conception to birth, and then through our lives we will relive these patterns. And so if there is trauma in our time of conception in the womb, and if there's trauma in our early life, and say adoption is perhaps the most profound trauma for a baby, or a near-death experience at birth. Being in an incubator is actually a very traumatic experience for a baby. And babies are a very deep feeling. One of the misconceptions that was around for many, many years is that the baby doesn't know what's going on because the baby doesn't understand. Well, as babies, we are just taking everything in at a feeling level. And so we know that something is wrong, and we wire that into ourselves. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, I don't know of any traumas that happened to me in this time, but I still have these feelings of, not being able to have a positive relationship with food, not being able to aim to want to be healthy. There's always some story that's going on there, some inner voice that's like a very harsh critic. You're not good enough, you can't be loved unless you look like this, you're so weak for not getting into shape. And these issues that we have as humanity, they're global and they're collective, and they're really to me, they're the foundation of all the troubles in the world. Because once we get this healing and this trust back with our own internalized spiritual mother and father, with our Mother Earth as our planet that we live on, we can regain this very deep level of trust. And this deep level of trust and love for ourselves that come from that, they give us the strength to actually face the deep-rooted traumatic feelings that we still carry. And in video 3, I'm going to give you a practice that it takes courage, but it really works. And I will be there with you through that process to show you actually that you don't have to go into years of therapy. In fact, you may have been in years of therapy and it's still not really got there. You know, therapy on a mental level will heal certain aspects, but you need to go into the emotional and spiritual levels and the pre-verbal states of when these patterns were first set down, if you really want a long-lasting solution. And so I'll say to you that these processes, they're not miracle cures. They take courage, they take commitment. But perhaps if you're here watching this, you really are in that place of despair, that things need to change and another diet isn't going to hack it. You know, another a year with a therapist might not be enough to hack it. And in many ways, I feel that these issues have been presented to us in this time to force us to go into a more spiritual relationship with ourselves and to invite our spirit, which is longing to be in our body, to be here, to be grounded, and to be really present and in our power and valuing our uniqueness. Okay, so we've got these issues set down with our own mother. But there's another level of this. And so even people who've had the kind of best conception, their mom and dad were like in an orgasmic state when they were conceived and the pregnancy went really well and they've really bonded through breastfeeding, and eye contact is the main way in which the baby bonds with the mother. And the way the mother deals with her own emotional states is absolutely core. And how the mother feels about herself and her body during this process of pregnancy is so absolutely core to how the baby will internalize its feelings of, yes, this is the body, this is the body I've come to be in, and I love this body. So there's this bigger issue though, and this has to do with our relationship with the earth and the origins of this trauma, which affects the whole of humanity. Even indigenous people living in the old ways close to the earth have been affected by this trauma. 11,500 years ago, there was a cosmic, catastrophic event in our solar system, and it greatly affected the earth. And this is known as the Great Flood in our mythical teachings. And there's many theories about what the Great Flood was, but the one that makes the most sense to me is that around about 7 comets hit the Earth due to something like a supernova. Another theory is that a big planet in the outer solar system hit Earth. But the amount of water that would cause a worldwide flood can really be explained best, I think, by the comet theory, because comet tails contain water. And there were actually pre-existing civilizations prior to this, and in the archaeological digs now, and a lot of this is suppressed stuff because history is having to be rewritten. That prior to the great temples, even, there were civilizations on Earth where men and women lived as equals. We lived in a wonderful relationship with the earth, with the animals. We knew how to create energy from the natural rhythms and resources of the earth. So we weren't kind of working against the earth. And so this trauma is internalized in humanity, that we can't trust the earth, we can't trust life. And so we've kind of went through many years of just sheer survival, really, and we've emerged from that. And this is our kind of living history that we remember. And so the Industrial Revolution seemed to us to be like amazing. You know, now we can have all these things that we couldn't have before. You know, obviously not at the time for the really poor people who had to live in those poverty situations and workhouses and all of that. But, you know, we're living now in a time where we have the consumer society. We can pretty much have whatever it is that we want. And I heard somewhat worryingly on TV last night that DNA is now being worked on so we can smoke and drink and do whatever we want and we'll never die. I don't think that's actually going to be possible, because the more we kind of try and outdo the earth and her wisdom, the more kind of problems later down the line we can create. So we've got to be really careful. I'm not against progress or technology, but I'm really in favor of working with the earth and cosmic rhythms to harness the amazing creative life force potential that is already there, that will enable us to live in harmony. So there's this other level that is collective. And so these videos I'm showing to you, they always move between the personal and the individual, because I know from my own experience, and I know also from these attachment issues, how painful they can be, because I have an adopted son. And so I've lived through this very extremely painful end of this trauma, that then, you know, it goes through all our other relationships through life. This lack of trust, this fear of betrayal, this feeling that we have to shape ourselves into something else so that we can be loved. And all the time we're building bigger and bigger walls around the inner beauty, the inner amazing person, that I think we all have this glimpse that there's this amazing person in there. And, you know, when we were a child and when we were a teenager, often this person was much more present and on the surface, but they've kind of retreated into a world. And we have these very sophisticated protection mechanisms like addictions, overeating, feeling like we're starved, really. And we are starved. We're starved of love. And so this is where I really hope that you hear these words and you allow yourself the possibility that a new door can open for you, a new road ahead can come about. So please listen to the video tomorrow, which is all about body hair and challenging the way that our bodies are owned and controlled by the patriarchal society. So it's going to be a bit of a controversial talk, and I hope that you will join me for that. Namaste.